Good morning or good afternoon. Welcome to Megaport Live. My name is Mike, and I'll be walking you through all things Megaport on this beautiful Friday. So, with that, since we're at the top of the hour, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, this is Mike with Megaport. I am a solutions architect, and we're going to cover a brief overview of Megaport in slides, do a little bit of whiteboarding, and then I'm going to go into the portal. And along the way, if there's any questions, please go ahead and put those in chat, and let's go ahead and get started. So, Megaport Complex Network Certified. What is Megaport? We are a network as a service provider. We've been around 10 years. We're based in Australia. We are publicly listed on the Australian Exchange, ticker symbol MP1. And we are the easy button for cloud connectivity and global WAN. And we simplify the WAN. You literally can get solutions stood up in minutes. It's pretty amazing to see it, and we'll walk through that in the portal. Our sales groups consist of pods with a sales executive, a solutions architect, and also a customer success manager. And that is your account team. We are increasingly seeing customers diversify their connectivity. 77% of Megaport customers terminate to the cloud, and 43% connect to more than one cloud: Azure, AWS, Google, Oracle, IBM, etc. There are three basic core products that Megaport has on the left side of the screen that are access products. And we'll talk about connectivity associated with that as well. A port is an interface from 110 or 100 gig that is a physical interface that you connect via last mile circuit or a connection in a data center. I have a slide that shows this coming up that'll illustrate this really well. But the point is, once you're on the Megaport network in a port, or any of these access products, you can get to any one of our data centers, and we have presence in over 900 worldwide. A Megaport cloud router speaks to what I was saying on the previous slide about multi-cloud. It is that ability to stand up a virtual router on compute, which I'll show you here in a minute, that allows you to traverse through the MCR from cloud to cloud, like Azure to AWS, without having to hairpin back to your premises or your data center. So it makes it very nice to migrate those workloads in a way without having to hairpin. And I'm going to touch on a new set of speeds that are available here in a little bit, which is very exciting. Megaport Virtual Edge takes that same compute type of concept and extends it to routing, SD-WAN, and firewall vendors. As an example, if you're using Palo Firewall or Prisma SD-WAN, you can actually take a license from one of those vendors and install it on our compute and use that as another branch location that you can manage from an orchestrator. And I actually have an MVE stood up, but we're going to walk through what that looks like. And it is a great way to extend connectivity to branch locations without needing a last mile connection. So it's very exciting. The Megaport Virtual Cross Connect on the right side, that is actually the connection to a cloud provider or to another data center or between MCRs and MVEs and ports. And it is a layer 2 service. And if it's between our endpoints, it's very elastic and flexible and can be adjusted up or down. Depending on the cloud provider, if it's AWS and Azure and Google, they can be increased in the case of Azure, or they can be, rebuilt and restored based on the rules that they have. The marketplace is an ecosystem of partners like Wasabi, like Cloudflare, like RingCentral, who are also RingCentral, pardon me, are also Megaport customers, and they allow their customers to connect to us and vice versa through a service key. And that's what is next to that on the bottom. Megaport Internet is available across the world, and it's something that could be stood up in minutes. We see it as a primary connection. We use it off of an MVE. We also see customers use it maybe for access, guest access at a prem, et cetera, and I'll show you that. And then Mega IX is our internet exchange product that we have worldwide as well. So multiple regions there. So hybrid cloud is that idea of taking a port and connecting in a data center or from a last mile connection to a cloud on-ramp, like what I was referring to here. You're seeing Google, Azure, AWS, and Oracle. This is what it looks like from a diagram perspective. On the left-hand side, I have a customer premises. There's a cross connect to a meet me room. I grab a circuit from a Lumen, a Zayo, a Verizon, Comcast, Crown Castle, whomever, and I get that provision to the meet me room of a Megaport enabled data center. And then I order a Megaport port And after I do that, I order that cross connect that you see here on the right side, and I establish that connection end to end. And once I do that, I have that full port enabled. And then this is where that VXC that I was referring to on the previous slide, it's a layer 2 connection, a layer 2 VLAN to the cloud. So sometimes the presence is actually within the same data center. Sometimes they have often I should say, have a cage presence in one of our data centers, and it's just simply ordering a cross connect to that cage. So that's the basic way to get to Megaport. Cross cloud is that Megaport cloud router that I was referring to. On our screen is the Megaport locations where we have MCR and MVE compute available. And within each of these cities, and I happen to be in Denver, there are multiple locations where the compute lives. So if I have an MCR in Denver, I actually have 3 different locations where I can install it, and it has redundancy in each one of these facilities, what we call red and blue zones that we utilize for maintenance and resiliency purposes. So you can stand up an HA pair. But the idea being that I can have redundancy within a facility or in multiple facilities in red and blue zones, and I can stand up that compute and I can build those cloud workloads. Incidentally, one of the use cases we see with Megaport Cloud Router is an acquisition. Perhaps the company acquires uh, another company that is using Azure, and they're an AWS shop and they need to migrate from Azure to AWS, or they need to share workloads. That's a very common MCR use case. Stand it up, migrate the workloads, and tear it down if you need to. And this is what the cross cloud looks like from a diagram perspective. Virtual POP taking the same compute logic and using a license as Fortinet, Cisco, uh, Palo Alto, etc., VMware, and install it on Megaport Compute in those same cities I was showing you, and use that to as a cross cloud option or connectivity to branch offices, etc. And they can be connected back to a Megaport enabled data center as well. So again, these are some of the licenses that are available. So right now, the MVE comes in 4 different sizes from 2 CPU and 8 gig of RAM all the way up to 12 and 48 gig of RAM. We have a larger 16 CPU size that's coming down the pike later this year. But those are the various sizes that it represents. We also attach internet to it, and I'll show it to you in a diagram that'll be a little more clear, but that's the way, pardon me, branch offices actually talk to the MVE because we put a transit circuit on it. Here's a very common use case of Megaport Virtual Edge as it relates to branch offices. So in this scenario, I've got MVEs that are deployed in Chicago, let's say in Digital Realty and Equinix, and I've got branch offices in the Midwest that talk to the MVE over IPsec, and then I use the VXCs to talk to the cloud in Azure and AWS. And you can also see it connects to a data center presence in Michigan and Nebraska and Dallas. So we can use those same VXCs to go back to core infrastructure, but geographically distribute the traffic and reduce latency within a region. And it's worth noting that Megaport's backbone is very predictable. We know exactly how long it takes between any Megaport endpoint, pardon me, and we publish that on a monthly basis. So, West Coast, Dallas, Midwest, et cetera, we can tell you exactly monthly to the millisecond how long that'll take. Okay, let's keep going here. Global WAN as a service is a really neat product in that you're leveraging Megaport's global backbone to provision ports, MCRs, and MVEs and connecting them together using VXCs or those layer 2 services. And I'll show you a really neat use case coming up here where companies are actually able to collapse their MPLS infrastructure that are spread out over multiple vendors and consolidate everything on Megaport. And it's a huge value. So this is a real world example of a customer that has presence in Denver, in Virginia, Canada, and also the UK. And they had disparate MPLS providers, and from acquisitions, and they were tired of managing that across multiple vendors and multiple architectures. So what they decided to do was approach their vendor for MPLS in these different countries and say, hey, get me to these Megaport enabled POPs with a last mile circuit, and that helped them satisfy their spend, their contractual obligations, and reduce, complexity in a big way. So this is that first option, right? I have my last mile connections to a Megaport enabled data center. I set it up in red and blue zones within the facility for redundancy purposes, and then fully mesh that architecture across the world with that global WAN, right? With those VXCs, and then also to the cloud in each one of these workload regions. So it's fully meshed and massively consolidates and simplifies their network and routing. So this is a fantastic example, and we're seeing more and more of this kind of thing. Okay. So with that, I want to get out of the slide mode and talk a little bit more about some of those scenarios that we were walking through in these diagrams, which I think illustrate it a little bit better. So in this case, I've got a last mile carrier circuit in redundant fashion in Denver, connected to core site, which is 910 15th Street downtown, in a red and blue or redundant configuration, connecting to a West US Azure region over Express Route. And with Microsoft, the Express Route can be divided over two Azure routers to satisfy their SLA. So I can take one Express Route and one service key and provision two VXCs or layer 2 services of that Express Route to get to Azure. This right here is a bread and butter table stakes configuration on Megaport, which we see very, very often. Okay. Now this takes the port and the cloud connectivity to one more level by adding in MCR into the equation. So I take my redundant port configuration, but I also have the ability to provision MCRs to give me that cross cloud capability without having to hairpin all the way back to my data center. So maybe I'm in Denver, but I need to get to the Midwest for cloud, and I want to keep the cloud routing regional to keep my latency down. Another very common configuration on Megaport. MVE, this I think does a nice job of illustrating how the branch offices or remote locations ultimately talk to the MVE in those compute locations. So we have branch sites that connect via IPsec tunnel over their internet, right, or SD-WAN, and then using our internet transit, we build a pipe from the MVE on the internet, and I'll show you that here in a bit. And this is how that end-to-end flow of traffic goes back and forth. And similar to the previous example, I can use that as cross-cloud. I can use that as an access mechanism to get from the branch to either one of these cloud regions under this configuration. So very powerful. And then this, of course, is that same global WAN that we were talking about earlier. So with that, I want to go into the Megaport portal, and I want to show you what it looks like to build out these products. This is, the login of the portal and the navigation of it doesn't matter if you're standing up a port in Denver or in Tokyo. The look and feel is exactly the same. So let's go ahead and create a port, and I'm going to create it in Denver and core site, which we've been alluding to already. And you'll see that I've got the ability to configure up to a 100 gig port. And I can also get redundancy within this facility, and I'll show you that. So we'll just do mic test portal here. And you can see the rates month to month, 450 on a 36-month term, which is just 12 months just for discussion purposes. And I'm going to go ahead and create a diverse pair, red and blue zone diversity. And in the event that we perform a maintenance, which we do periodically, we'll take a red or a blue zone port out of service for the duration of that maintenance, maybe a couple hours, so that the traffic will flow over the secondary port. We'll never do maintenance on red and blue in the same metro ever. So just something to note and something to talk over with your team as you're setting up your service. So go ahead and click next. And we're going to go ahead and add those ports in red and blue again. And we'll go ahead and order that. Okay. So it's validating the order. I'm going to order now. And while it's refreshing, I'll let you know that we now, we're going to go to MCRs here in a moment. We now are offering 100 gig MCRs. So it used to go, 1, 2.5, 5, and 10, but now we have 25, 50, and 100. which is very, very exciting. So I won't go through the build of that, but I do want you to see that the option does exist now to have 100 gig ports and 100 gig, pardon me, MCRs in multiple locations. So let's, for example, look at Chicago, and we'll grab one out of this location, and you can see we've got 100 gig ports available, which is really exciting. That's rolled out in the past few weeks, and we're really excited to see it. So I'll just, yeah, MCR test. Okay. Okay. I'm going to actually get out of that really quick, but I wanted you to see that. And now I want to show you MVE, and we're going to actually establish a connection to Azure as we wrap things up here today. Oh, sorry about that. Okay. So lastly, we're going to go with MVE, and we're going to go in Denver. Going to go to Iron Mountain, different location. And I'm going to choose Palo Alto just so that you can see it. And I'm going to choose the firewall instance. We also have the SD-WAN version. Okay. And I'm going to just, and within this, I can choose 2 core, 8 CPU, or 1248. I'm just going to choose 2. And okay. Now what I can do is put in my SSH key and a password, and I can map my management plane and data plane virtual interfaces or sub interfaces, what we call VNICs. And I'm going to add an additional sub interface for an HA pair, a prem, and just one more additional one for a total of 5. Okay. And let me drop in my SSH key here really quick, and we'll just show it, get it to the next step where it's going to ask us to add our internet. So bear with me here. Okay. So let's go ahead and drop the SSH key in here. And we'll go ahead and go next. Okay. So apologize for the delay. Um, what it will ask me next, and I built this already out in another MVE that I established earlier, is to get me to the branch office locations like I was showing you uh, on the previous slide. To get from there to the Megaport Virtual Edge, I need 2 types of internet. One is management so that I can actually get to the device. And the other one is the data, which is again the branch office connectivity. And so I have a 1 gig VXC for my branch offices and a very small 50 meg for my management interface. Once I've added that, I actually come in here and I go to this IP, and this allows me to get into that box via SSH. Okay. And it'll take just a minute, but this is actually going to take me into PAN. All right. And now I'm actually in the orchestrator of Palo Alto, and I can use this to configure the device as it were another part or another site or another branch location. All right. So with that said, let's go ahead and provision an express route off of our port that we created And I want to point something out, how quickly something occurred. So I ordered that port in CoreSite, and it allowed me to download an LOA immediately. Okay. And with that, a process that used to take days or weeks is done within minutes. So I can turn around and give this LOA to CoreSite. They establish that cross connect. Once it's run to my cage or to, cross connect to my last mile circuit, go into my prem, that port is up and working. So it works really, really well, right? If I wanted to, I can also build a connection to the cloud, like Azure. And I created a service key off of my express route just a few moments ago. So this is going to the West US compute region in Azure. It's going to on-ramp in Denver, Colorado. It's going to leave the Megaport backbone and get on Azure there, and at the speed of 50 meg. And I copy that service key, come into the portal. And when it does that, it's actually making an API call to Azure, and it's grabbing that. And then it's already got the 50 meg pre-populated because that's what we build. We'll do it ER1 primary and 50 meg. And I'm going to go ahead and assign a VLAN of 200 to this. And I'm going to configure my Azure VLAN for private peering 100 and click next. Add VXC. Okay. So that gave me my first express route. I was talking a little bit ago on the slide about having the ability to split my express route across two VXCs to satisfy the Azure SLA requirements. So now I'm going to build that second one, or the blue one, and I'm going to go ahead and go into Azure, drop back in my service key. Okay. And I'm going to on-ramp in Denver again. And I'm going to say ER1 secondary, 50 meg. Going to assign this VLAN 201, but I'm still going to map it to the Azure VLAN of 100. Next. So with that, as soon as I click order, it's going to provision those express routes. It's going to be up and working as soon as I add in my IP addressing, and I'm going to be up and running. So literally within minutes, I can build my services, apply my routing, and have my configurations done within a minute. So I'm going to pause there to see if there's any questions before we wrap things up. Any questions in the chat?
No questions.
Okay. Well, with that, I wish you all a happy Friday and a great weekend, and thanks for joining.